But let's just get into it. Clive, Edu Gaspar leaving for Nottingham Forest, a position where he will have more power at a multi-club model, and per the rumors being reported, treble his wages. For those people who live where I live, it's triple your wages. You say tomato, I say tomato. It's tomato, period. It's not tomato. So, Clive, what are your sort of immediate thoughts in the wake of this news?
Yeah, so as we record on this Monday morning for you, the rumour is that he's going to join a multi-club model and be the CEO. That role has recently been taken up at Arsenal by Richard Garlick, so you can do some maths there if you want to. I'm not prepared to at this moment in time until the story comes out. And Richard Garlick has underpinned himself with a new structure under himself, so potentially Edu's career path, he sees it going a different direction to what was on offer at Arsenal, which is more of a football technical director role. So that's just me guessing and adding up. You see, when you're tripling your salary and you have a broad sort of multi-region continental role in South America, in Europe, etc., then maybe that's how he wants to grow and develop himself. So that's just me guessing. From an Arsenal perspective, what do you do? So the first thing you do when something like this happens is you do an impact analysis and understand what that means for us. And then you look, just like we did with, say, Jonas left recently, we have like an interim person in charge. So when you lose somebody, you put an interim in and you make sure roles and responsibilities are divided around the club. So there's no void. There's no void in responsibilities and people don't see there's a gap. We don't look vulnerable. And so that's what I'm looking at, really. So the first communication that comes out of the club will be around roles, responsibilities, and who's going to take that on to lessen the day-to-day impact immediately so they can look forward to find out how they're going to restructure. And there is opportunity to restructure because Edu's role incorporated the academy, the women's side, and the men's side. So basically, he is Mr. Football. And so it gives an opportunity to maybe split some of that up a little bit, potentially, and form a new structure. But I will say, despite the fact that Mikel and Edu have been partners since day one, since Mikel came in, Mikel inherited Edu, per se, as part of the club, and therefore it's a fantastic relationship going forward. But there's an opportunity for Mikel to work with somebody of his own choice, shall we say. I do think the gravitas of that person is important. Because what I don't want to go back to, Elliot, my good friend, is the days when I will be saying those magical words, single point of failure, when with Arsene Wenger when we first started this, because he was everything to the club. And I personally don't want to go back to that because it's just not sensible. It's not a sensible sort of diversified organizational structure. So I like to see something a little bit more defined. And so with Richard Garlick, with Tim Lewis, etc., that's not going to happen per se because they're prominent figures. However, the football side of things, I think, needs another figure if Eddie was to go. So it'd be interesting to see which way they pivot to.
Yeah, well said. Paul, your thoughts?
So we've had him since 2019. He came in a different time for different people to do somewhat a different job. He grew into the job. So the question with Edu was, what was his superpower in terms of a guy within the club? I think his superpower in the end was he was good glue. He was good. He had a personality that managed us through different scenarios, ups and downs of the club. And was he a brilliant finder of talent, a brilliant coordinator of stats, scouting? I think he grew into it. I think he did a very passable job, but obviously this presents an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity we could fluff or make the most of. And so here we are, probably one of the most interesting clubs on the planet to work for. A fantastic job for somebody, a fantastic situation that's, as long as they're not thinking about this weekend, a super positive environment to move into. The other thing that Arsenal has going for it is we don't have a lot of Macbethian politics in here, right? There's a lot of clubs you could join who are in a an interesting spot, an interesting job, etc. But like, it's like watching Macbeth in terms of what goes on when you're in there. You're in there, you're out. They're turning you around. They're firing you. They're moving the people around you. The manager's gone. Like, this is a situation in which you can visualize yourself doing a really good job and being there for a long period of time with a stable organization that has a positive trajectory. It's a fantastic job to go and look for the best talent on the planet to do something like this. I'm minded that a few seasons ago, you will remember, Elliot, I was the one calling for Edu's head because things were going a little slowly in the transfer market that summer, and he was barbecuing, and it was doing my head in. And normally I filter myself and I apply a little reason and logic, but that was one occasion I decided to just feel my feelings, and I expressed it. He kind of did. He has his own vibe. I guess it works for him. But it's finally come true. I finally got my wish, Elliot. I called for his head. I've got it on a plate. I've got it on the barbecue. We'll miss all that side of it. It was kind of a nice vibe in the end. He did have the South American angle. I don't know that we leveraged that to the max. Gabriel Jesus, we kind of already knew about, as did Mikel. I don't know that we leveraged South America to the max. There's lots of opportunity to go forward. I'm okay with that. I'm very much with Clive on that point, though, that we need to find the right balance between somebody who's great for Mikel Arteta, but not necessarily somebody Mikel Arteta feels is working for him.
Clive?
Yeah, sorry. I remember we was at the Ali Pally, actually, and we was on the stage, and I was doing one of my waffling sessions, and I remember saying at the time, what we have to do is do succession planning. And the reason why, because I knew we just come through a fantastic season of record-breaking numbers, etc., etc. And don't think for a second that other clubs with similar ambitions are not watching where we've come from, right? So, and the people I was thinking about was mainly three people, actually. Edu, Arteta, and funny enough is Carlos Cuesta, who I think is a super talent in the club and we need to look after, and there were some rumours around him. So those are three people I was thinking about because they are the force for me behind the football side of things. And so if you're a smart club like, say, a Brighton, you should be succession planning all the time for this scenario, to make sure that we are comfortable moving forward. So this is this shocked me this morning, if I'm honest with you. But in some ways, when you have high quality people, high quality individuals, they are going to get headhunted. It's just going to happen. And the Nottingham Forest one is the number one story, but there have been other stories out there, and I'm sure he has a choice of many clubs to go to, as would Mikel Arteta if he was ever on the market. So what Edu has done historically over, do you remember when we had to get rid of all the scouts and everyone was losing their minds? Remember when we had to pay the idiots off? Everyone's losing their minds when we were buying those young players. We've gone through a bit here, and he's reshaped the data side of things there, reshaped the moving away from the black book of Raul and being far more collaborative in how we approach decision making around recruiting players. And whether you want to measure him on the good recruits or the bad recruits, that's your choice. It's up to you. If you like him, you're going to remember ones that were not so successful. Sorry, if you don't like him, remember ones that are not so successful. And if you think he's done a good thing, then you remember all the successful. It's up to you. It's your choice. We don't really know how these things work. But what I do know, the painful side of things around cleaning up, he put himself out there. He cleaned up. He paid people off. With Mikel, they developed young players to keep us in the room until they matured, to a point where we've come second twice and we're still up there right now. And it's not a good week to talk about Arsenal becoming results. But we're not a dog and duck, are we? We're still there. And he's been behind that. And he's been behind the cleansing of the club on the football side of things and developing a new identity around the technical and the mental and the physical side. And we've got a team now that can play multiple ways and is right there at the top end of the game in the Champions League, which wasn't the case when he joined in 2019. So I think it's a really positive role he's undertaken. However, in life, nothing ever stays the same. Renewal is part of things. Change is part of things. It's how you manage that change and how you take that change and make it an opportunity to develop your club in a better way. And I bet you, and I hope there are people there who are just chilling today in the club saying, right, let's go again. You know, we are attractive, as Paul alluded to. Let's go again. How are we going to reshape this? Is there an organizational opportunity? And how can we develop the site? I look at it from a three-side perspective. I look at the academy, I look at the women's side, and the men's side. There's opportunities in all three of those departments to be better. So that's how I look at it. Let's get on with it, right? That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to realize here. First and foremost, this is the best time to lose Edu. The worst time to lose Edu would have been when we lost Raul or when we got rid of Raul. It is much easier to try to continue to improve on and maintain the quality of this Arsenal than fix the broken Arsenal of 5 years ago. That was a difficult project. Identifying the path back to relevance, the path back to Champions League, the path back to title contention, that was difficult. That was a challenging path to navigate. That path has been navigated. We now have an excellent squad, rated as one of the most valuable in world football. And we simply need to continue to add quality on top of that, but we do not need to reshape the entire squad and entire club as we did at that time. So I think anybody with a good head on their shoulders who is able to work with Mikel Arteta and able to work with Josh Kroenke and Tim Lewis and Richard Garlick and James King, that person will probably succeed. I think the other reason this is not as hard as we think is that world football has changed. There's not a lot of secrets in the game anymore. Everybody's got the same data. Everybody's got the same Y-Scout account. There are people doing public scouting on Twitter that know the players that the clubs are looking at. The biggest thing that changed at Arsenal when David Dein left Arsenal, isn't that the intelligence of the club was drained. Arsene Wenger was always the genius and the architect of that Arsenal, but you have to have a sounding board. You have to have a check on your ideas. You have to have someone you trust who you bounce ideas off of and work, as Clive said, collaboratively. And that would be my single biggest worry, as Clive pointed out, is does Mikel Arteta simply fill up the power vacuum and lose a sounding board, lose a person he trusts, who he can work with, who will maybe check some of his less good ideas and encourage some of his better ideas, because even the biggest geniuses in the world have good ideas and bad ideas. And having a railway manager, someone who flips the switcher to drive more of the things towards the good ideas and away from the bad ideas, is important. And so ultimately, the person who comes in more than anything needs to be able to work with Mikel Arteta to guide decision-making towards what's best for the club long-term, and be able to work up with Tim Lewis and Richard Garlick and ultimately Josh and Stan. But we have the data. We have a division of labor. We have distribution of responsibilities across the club, across multiple competent individuals. We have an excellent manager with a good vision, and we have a club that is in a good position. So I don't think this is cataclysmic by any means, and I don't think we need to read into it that this is because he couldn't work with Mikel or this or that. Let me tell you why people leave. More money, more power. He is getting more money and more power. You know the more money, more problems? It's actually more money, I'll take the job, thank you, is what it is. So triple your wages, more power in a global organization, a CEO label, of course, that's appealing. He's gone for it. I think maybe, given where we are right now, and it feels like something new is needed to push us over the next line, maybe the timing is good. Maybe the timing is good. If we're bumping up against the first ceiling this project has hit, maybe getting someone else in who will push us past that ceiling. Someone with a new idea that whispers something in Mikel's head, that triggers a new thought, that gets us going in a new direction. So I think we can start to turn towards the football side of things, but I'm quietly enthusiastic about this change, Clive, not because I have negative thoughts about Edu, but because I think the really big distance that needed to be traveled has been traveled. And now maybe there's a slight pivot or a slight move that needs to be made. And to your point, the thing I just most want to make sure is that Mikel has a trusted voice in the club that can not only carry his message to leadership, but check his message if it needs to be modified or checked or maybe even contradicted at times.
Yeah, for me, he needs a football partner. That's what he needs. Somebody that understands his technical direction of the team and enables that to help him make that happen. I want him I want our manager to focus on the football side of things, on the coaching side of things, to extract more performance out of the players that he has. I don't want him walking around with a briefcase like Arsene Wenger did towards the end of his time when he was CEO, technical director, and manager and coach, and until he broke. Right, so that's not going to work in this environment where you have an away defeat, 2 away defeats, and things change. Right, your media profile changes with amongst the Arsenal fans, and so yeah, I'd much rather have. I don't want that to be him to be too stretched out. So I'm really interested to see what we do. I am genuinely interested to see what we do. If you look at the youth side of the game, we spoke to Art about it last week, didn't we? What's happening at that side of things? We need to get better there. There needs to be better infrastructure around the training ground and maybe the main ground as well. You got a situation with the women's team. There's Claire. I'm talking out of turn here because Tim knows this better than me. But Claire Wheatley is a senior person in that structure. Ed is involved. Is the opportunity to restructure that part of the football world also as well, given its expansion and future expansion, a new TV deal upcoming? Does it need special attention? Is potentially a new manager coming in? So this is an opportune moment. I thought you spoke really well there. This is an opportune moment. The heavy, dirty lifting of paying off your skipper to leave in Aubameyang and watching other teams qualify for Europe while you miss out on a few points while you're giving a striker away. The painful stuff has been done. Now it's like, okay, the final piece is now, what do we need to do to be better as a club, as an organisation going forward? And I'm someone who just looks that way. You know, it's always about tomorrow. It's not about yesterday. It's always about the next thing you do. But you've got to learn lessons from yesterday. And I think that's important to make sure that everyone has their own checks and balances. And no one has an extraordinary influence over your culture of your club. No one person does that. It's a collective thing. That's the thing I'm not concerned about, but I'll have my eyes looking at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and look, I want to say this. As fans, it's not our job to zoom out. As fans, it's our job to zoom way in and get really invested in the game that's kicking off tonight, right? That's fine. As a club, you have to zoom out. If you are feeling right now really down about Arsenal, because Arsenal lost a football match the other day and suddenly we're not sure we're going to win the title, I totally get that. But if you zoom out and look at the distance we traveled in 5 years as a club, it is nothing but an unqualified, staggering success. A success that Manchester United has not been able to manage, despite what they spend. And the size of their organization and being the biggest club in England. A success that Chelsea has not managed, despite spending, I don't even want to venture a guess at how much, but probably over £1 billion, right? It is a success that really 2 clubs have managed. Liverpool, who were already in a position of exceptional success, and Manchester City, and we know the story there. No one else has managed it. Newcastle had new ownership come in. They're muddling around mid-table. They haven't really figured out how they want to leverage their resources to do things. So the distance we've traveled is an unqualified success. I get it. Zoomed in, it looks frustrating right now because we're not making that last step yet. But zoomed out, you simply cannot deny it's a big step that we've taken, thanks to Mikel, thanks to Edu, to Tim Lewis, to the group that have taken us here. Now, as a final point on this, there are people that are going to be worried. Well, now it's just going to be all Mikel Arteta. He's the only voice in the room. He's the only voice in the club that matters. First of all, I'm going to tell you something. You're probably somewhat right. Anytime I've been, told by anybody who's been to events at the club, when Mikel Arteta walks in a room, a hush falls over it. He carries that kind of weight inside the club. But I'm going to tell you something. This is every club. Maresca wanted Sterling gone. Sterling's gone. Ten Hag wanted to buy only players from teams he managed and from the Netherlands. They only bought Dutch players. It's not just the Klopps and the Artetas and the Peps getting what they want. It's the Ten Hags and the Marescas getting what they want. And the Eddie Howe's, right? And by the way, last time we had a manager who was just a coach and the club bought the players. It was Unai Emery asking for Zaha and Raul giving him £72 million Pepe. So let's not fall in love with any one model over the other. Yes, there need to be checks and balances, but in most clubs, the manager is the footballing brain of the club, and you commit to that. And that's a cycle, and you go through that cycle. And so we're in that cycle right now, and mostly it's been good.